All right. So I call this workshop Into the Future. And even though I will be talking about 2020 and 2021, and I'll explain why I feel 2020 is so important and that we have to go into it before we can even start, consolidating what 2021 is. So for the agenda today, we will go into the significance of the winter solstice, and this is because winter solstice is just tomorrow. Well, actually, the night from today to tomorrow. That's why I thought it's such a significant time. In addition to other alignments that are happening on that same day and just recently happened and are about to happen. I mean, astrological alignments. So we will we will build everything around the winter solstice. So we'll start with the winter solstice, the significance of it, and what you can gain from it. We will then go into talking about the 2020, the blessings and the lessons that it brought to us, and how you can kind of before the end of the year, how can you really gain all of the lessons and blessings and digest them and integrate them into your life, so that you don't feel that, oh my god, this was a difficult year, and maybe it wasn't for you, but in one way or another, for sure it was transformative. And I will explain why it cannot be skipped, why it is such an important year to digest very well in order for a successful moving forward. I will be asking you some questions that you will journal, that will be a reflection of the past year. And then I will go into describing some major themes of 2021 as much as possible in a very understandable language. So what are the themes and what do they mean for us collectively, and also how they may show up for you individually. And then I will talk about the winter and the spring season. So basically about 6 months from now, a little bit more in detail, what energies are presented during those seasons and how can you use this time best, and where should you put your focus, or I will at least offer you some perspectives that you could choose to follow or not. And then we will end with the winter solstice assignment. I will again offer you something very easy, but that you can do tonight, or even for the days after that. And I will explain that later. If we have any question, if we will have any time left, we can go into the Q&A, and I can also pull some cards. Let's see how much time we have. And like I said, if there's any questions that you have, you can just, interrupt and ask the question. You don't have to wait all the way until the end. So I'm just going to tell a few things about how I use astrology and how I look at it, because there's no astrology without the astrologer. And since I am right now transmitting this information to you, I want to make that clear. So I don't use it as some sort of gods or energies that are, like dominant on me and they make my life some way. I feel we're all in that, there's nothing outside of it. There is nothing outside of this pool of energy. And there's some themes and threads. And this is just, for me, astrology is a language that the universe uses. It's one of the languages. There's many languages that you can get fluent in to understand the communication. So for me, this is the tool that I use, one of them, which I really like. And it offers me some guidance, like I said earlier, through the circumstances that I know I chose on some level. And this relates to something that Mendy said, life experience in life. I do feel that the circumstances, as much as they may feel unfortunate for my mind, for my lower mind, I know on some level I have chosen. And but again, I'm here in this one little body, and sometimes I feel lost. I feel all of those emotions. So how can I take these times and apply them to my life and find like where what are the tricks, where are the, you know, blessings, how can I identify them, because sometimes it may not be so easy to see. And so I see the astrology as a mirror of myself or as a mirror of somebody else. And I, as an interpreter, you know, will be offering you something that is, you know, kind of like coming through me, through my channel. And so you have to know what's right for you. In this workshop, I do not intend to spread any fear. And I actually, my intention is to empower and inspire and motivate you. So, but in any case, you have to reflect it back at yourself. And if there is some information that feels you, that makes you feel contracted, that maybe it's not for you right now. And then just take whatever feels right to you in this moment. So that's my basic message to you. So what is the winter solstice and why I spend so much time already to talk about it and to actually focus during this workshop? Well, winter solstice, this is, you know, it's astrologically, that's the time when sun, from the perspective of Earth, on Earth, enters into the zodiac of Capricorn. So it's usually on the 21st of December, and I'm assuming all of us here are in the northern hemisphere, because that's, you know, that's why we call it the winter solstice. Otherwise, it would be a Capricorn solstice. But if you are in the northern hemisphere, for you, this is the darkest time. And what happens, symbology of the winter solstice is that the times are dark, and they are, even though they're going to start getting a little lighter, for the next 3 months, it's still going to be quite dark. And in order for us to get through these times, sometimes almost, you know, it's kind of like hard to see things, we must connect to our inner light. So the winter solstice is an extremely important time for us to connect to our inner light and to connect to some aspects of ourselves that are ready to be awakened. You know, there's always some sort of awakening happening, so we can become more and more embodying of our greater selves. So the winter solstice and the time after that, for this 3 months until the spring equinox in March, is the perfect time for that. And I say, if you can dream it, you can create it. Right now is not so much of the time of creation as much as the time of connecting to yourself, hearing that inner guidance and dreaming it, and you know, things will start manifesting later. And right now, especially this year, more than any other year, we're sort of in between the spaces. We're floating in between the spaces. The collective, we're shifting into very different timelines and realities. We can't even comprehend what's happening to us, because to comprehend it with our lower mind, you know, what's happening to us, like with the forces that are so much grounded than that, it's just impossible. And in this sense, we may have to just learn how to let go, how to trust, and again, to anchor ourselves with just that inner guidance, that spiritual self, that inner light within. The more we are grounding ourselves and anchoring ourselves within that, you know, center of ourselves, and connecting with that truth, capital T, the easier any kind of transformations, any kind of adaptations that will be happening, any kind of changes to our lives will be taken, because we will always know who our truth. And this was always important, and it's becoming more and more and more crucial for everyone on earth, so that we can live an easier and more fulfilled life. So why 2020 cannot be skipped? And like I said, it's kind of the end of the year. So for some of us, maybe it may have been quite a difficult one, and maybe we just want to forget it. It's like, okay, done with this now, like what's new, you know? Especially for the human mind, we it's hard to, you know, suffering and pain, and we really want to get out of it. So if 2020 was a painful one for some of us, or it was uncomfortable to say the least, then we really want to get out. But I encourage you to stay with it for now, especially because of you know, this coming to the end of this year. And I will be kind of encouraging you to stay with it and try to really get all of the lessons sunk in so that you can move forward easier. Before we get into the, you know, the collective meaning and astrological meaning for this year, I would like to offer you a journaling prompt. And here are some questions that you can answer. And because we are limited in, you know, with time, you may not be able to answer all of those questions, but let me just kind of guide you through them and emphasize what's the most important thing and what do I mean by these questions, what I'm trying to get to. My goal here is for you to connect to your 2020, to really sink into the 2020 and maybe a few years before, so that you can reflect from that experience that you particularly had. So I cannot see your chart, and I cannot tell you, oh, this is where the greatest transformations, you know, happening, and this is the main lesson that you need to gain in order to move forward. But you may be able to narrow it down yourself. So the main questions of 2020 is some sort of a theme of powerlessness or dominance, and kind of like this sort of you know, the dichotomy between the two. Maybe sometimes you feel powerless, maybe sometimes you're dominating, and how are you connecting to that inner power? So the questions you can reflect on, one of the most important one is, what maybe that you can identify an area of your life, relationship, health, career, work, daily life, your you know, physical environment, your money, where you felt the loss of power or a need to control. Those things are kind of, you know, come together, right? When we feel loss of power, we at the same time feel like we need to control it. All of these questions will be bringing us to one theme, and hopefully to one area of our life. So when, even though there are 4 questions here, they all trying to get you to understand one area of your life. So of course there are other areas of your life that may have been affected, but I'm looking to see if you can identify one that's predominant, where you felt a loss of power, where maybe you have felt most fears, restrictions, or limitations. Or maybe for you it was showing as just great difficulties, or maybe some great transformation and biggest changes, because you may have not felt it very difficult, but you saw that there is, whoa, you know, things are really transforming and shape shifting into something else. So, and those would be some grand changes. Or so all of those 4 questions are targeting one area. And on the left, you see something that we call kind of a house description. So I'm just offering you to look and maybe narrow down to one area. So house number 1 or area of life number 1 is your identity. Maybe you went through some great transformations to your identity, to who you think you are and how you perceived your appearance may have changed. Or maybe you had some difficulties in area number 2 related to your personal finances and your immediate environment, your values in life. Maybe it is something about the third one, something with your mindset that needed to change in terms of how you think, how you talk to people, how you relate to your siblings, maybe even. Or is it something related to your home environment? Is it something related to your family that you have felt some great transformations in, or greatest fears? Maybe it is related to the area number 5, which is about self-expression and romance and children and play, and just that inner child, connecting to that inner child. Maybe you have experienced some loss of power in the area of your health, or your daily routine, or your kind of just like a everyday job or work habits. Maybe you had some fears in the areas of your relationships with your romantic partner or your business partners. Maybe there has been some sort of great transformations happening in that area. Or it may have been an area where you of shared resources, maybe a property with somebody, or related to taxes or big finances, or even any kind of work related, if you are like an auditor or something like that, that would mean that. Or in the feelings of intimacy and a deep connection with another being. Maybe it was in area number 9, which is related to traveling and higher education and wisdom and spirituality or religion, that you felt like you needed to control something and things were just shifting under your feet. Maybe you needed to adjust to some career changes or long-term dreams, or your status was changing and you felt fears in that area. Perhaps it has been an area of groups and your great community, maybe some humanitarian goals. So if you work in a nonprofit organization, or some kind of big future goals that you are making and trying to and maybe they have been changing and you felt the loss of power in that. And the last area is number 12. It is about your maybe you had a need to be alone, and maybe you didn't really want that, but you were put in this place where you were completely isolated, left with your own fears. At the same time, maybe connecting to that inner light, that that bright spot among all of this darkness that you may have been perceiving, or connecting to your unconscious mind and or your mental health. So those are the 12 areas of life that maybe you will be able to narrow down to where you felt this greatest transformations. Let me explain now kind of where I'm coming from. So you had answered some of these questions, all of those questions. And like I said, I highly encourage you to come back to this exercise later on. But I want to ask you whether you were able to tap into some theme, a theme that was in the area of dominance or powerlessness, something that maybe you felt just powerless at times, or wanting to change it, and that was not changing, and you kept feeling like you were stuck in the mud for this time. And of course there are many areas of life that have been affected this year, but I feel that there is one very important, and in that area there has been some old ways of exercising the power and control that are preventing you from your expansion. And we were given this opportunity this long year to really uproot this old belief. Maybe it's in the way of how you communicate to people. Maybe it's in your partnership and your relationships. Maybe it's in relation to how you communicate to your body and your health. There's some sort of shift of consciousness that is required for you to move forward in life so that you can move into a different world, because I will be talking how we're entering a new world. And right now is the time of setting a grand foundation and perhaps changing the foundation that you had in the past. Something related to your inner power. How can you connect to that inner power? And where have you been losing it in ways, or you had a different interpretations? So it is certainly a shift of consciousness that is required. And so those challenges and difficulties that you may have been presented, or at least changes that you may have been presented this year, were given to you to shake up, to really help you think differently. There was something, and there still is something in your life, that's my argument, that you need to change or shift your perception on, shift the way you work with it. Something of this old way of operating will no longer serve you further and will be holding you back. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the 2020 and why it is such a grand year. So it is not like any other year. And it is almost, we can say this, the 2020, the year 2020 was like one of like many centuries. And the fact that we live, like all of you and I live at this time, is already, filling me with honor and gratitude, because there's so much that we're here for, to experience and to create with each other. So one of the things, and this is where I'm going to get into a little bit more astrology. One of the major themes was a Capricorn stellium. Basically, a lot of very powerful planets, social planets, planets of transformation, all of this kind of energetic influence was in this area of Capricorn. And Capricorn is about structure, is about government, is about, big businesses and corporations. And if, let's say, you were born during the Capricorn season, meaning like your zodiac sign is Capricorn, you probably have felt this even stronger than maybe some other people. There's something about this transformation, and that's the alignment that brings this restructuring. And socially, we can see, on a collective, we can see that the restructuring was happening on a political, financial, and social level. And surely we, it's not a surprise for us at this time. And it is some sort of a global shift that began. It's not over yet. The fact that this year is so big, and the fact that this year is like one of so many years in like 800 centuries, and it's so important, just shows that this year cannot just be over and then we go back to normal. No, absolutely not. There will be, we are being brought to a different reality, and this was just an initiation of this transformation, and new results and new of seeds will be sprouting in a little bit. So this is at least a 36-year cycle. So for some of us, it's a whole life, right, that we've experienced. So it's something that of 36 years old that's completing right now. But even longer, because we can argue that, this biggest, greatest planets, the last time they met were in 1500 or 1600. Or even, and that's when there was a reformation of the Catholic Church, and where some part of the Catholic Church was kind of separating and became a Protestant church. So for the, think of the context for the time that there was, that was unheard of. That was a groundbreaking, that was, something that a lot of people resisted. A lot of, power and control was kind of being at risk. And this is what we're experiencing right now on a collective level. But more importantly, I like to kind of connect it to your personal life as well. Before then, this sort of stellium happened in the 13th century, in the early 1200s, in Capricorn. And at that time, that's when all of this global finance starting. That's when they started to kind of work with banks, and the different sort of groups started to accumulate more power. Before, it wasn't like that. And now we're coming to a conclusion of that cycle, meaning that there's some sort of transformation. Back then, that was a good thing. Now it's like, if you're holding on to that politically, financially, socially, where you only have some, groups that hold all of the power, it's not going to continue to work anymore. But of course, no one is going to just like let go of their power, right? Or of their old ways of operating. And like Mandy said, sometimes when we don't experience challenges, we don't really evolve. So that's why 2020 hit, so that we can really reshake everything to the ground. Another thing that was quite major is that we had 6 eclipses last year instead of 4. Usually we have about 4 eclipses. And this year we had 6. Add to that, and end of the year of 2019, there was one in December. Then there was one in January. So that was you can actually add that to, so make it 7. There were 3 in the middle of the year, June and July, and then 2 more right now, just passed in on November 30th and December 14th. So any kind of, when there are eclipses, anytime we have eclipses, is a very heightened time. It's a karmic time. But when we have 6 eclipses, it just shows us, it indicates to me at least, that it is a year of great karmic shifts. Something is happening. There's some sort of external energy flow that brings us, like takes us off the feet and brings us somewhere else. And there was also a lunar node shift, basically, which means that there was a collective attention. Prior to that, our collective attention for a year and a half until May was about your career and your family, your social status, and your security, your connection to your deep roots and your ancestors, or just building that security for yourself collectively. But now after May, we entered into this interesting polarity of Sagittarius and Gemini. And Gemini is all about the communication and listening and talking to each other. And Sagittarius is where the trends of Sagittarius, we actually have to learn to let go of. And that was that, because it could be about self-righteousness and this ideological thinking. So, and surely we can see way more conversations happening now, way more people are open to listen, and really we need to do it even more. And the risk is that we actually will be falling back into this sort of feeling that, oh, I know it all, like this is right and this is wrong. And this is the tendency of Sagittarius, that we should be kind of walking away from at this time, and embracing more of the Gemini lessons of listening, of being open-minded, of kind of connecting to other people, transferring information, being a little bit more logical rather than just fiery as Sagittarius could be. Another thing that was quite major that was happening this year, that we had some personal planets in retrograde. Just to skip the technical part of it, but basically we had Venus in retrograde, and whenever Venus is the planet of our goals and dreams in life, and also a planet of relationships and beauty, it was when it turns retrograde, meaning that perceived from Earth it's moving backwards, and that was happening in May, June. That means that there's some sort of questioning, some sort of revisioning of those areas that Venus rules, areas of relationship, finance, your dreams, your goals. So you may have either ended the relationship at that time, or maybe you began new ones, but usually whatever the relationships are that are beginning during Venus retrograde, they not meant to last long. Generally speaking, everybody is different, of course, but they are bringing some important lessons for you to understand what exactly that you want and what exactly that you cannot have. Understanding of yourself and of you in relationships, or with your goals and dreams, etc. And another planet that was retrograde was Mars. That goes retrograde about every 2 years. So it's not an every year occasion. And whenever Mars is in retrograde, Mars is the planet of vitality, of energy, of moving forward, of achieving your dreams, and just changing the reality outside of you, physically, externally. When it goes retrograde, that's when we feel that we cannot connect to that drive, we cannot connect to that power that just makes changes outside, and Mars may feel stuck. And the only changes that Mars retrograde is meant to be making are the inner changes, but it's not used to it. So that may have been a difficult time, September into November, maybe even starting August, where you may have felt stuck, or felt maybe even not good enough, that you're not producing enough, because of course in our society we're all about this masculine approach of bringing the results, seeing the results and being acknowledged by them. And that wasn't the time. It was not a time to really start any new projects, because they just don't have the momentum, they don't have the fuel. Mars would be the fuel, and there is no fuel. And even though Mars is out of retrograde already, it's still in the shadow period, which basically it still carries some of those feelings until mid-January, and then we're going to start feeling a little bit more of this momentum. Even right now you're probably already feeling different to that what you had in this fall, but it's going to get a little bit better. You're going to feel a little more energized. Also, Mars retrograde is not a good time to do any kind of surgical procedures or anything external changes. Like I said, they are not supported by the retrograde planet. And overall, we can say that 2020 was not a good year to start any new projects. And what I mean by new, I mean like really new. Some crazy idea came from outside and you've never considered that before. You don't have necessarily, you haven't been working for it. Then those projects may not come through. They may be started and then they may fail. But if you were working on something for a long time and now you're launching it, you may not feel, a very great momentum, but it will start picking up. And while you're doing it, you will be learning something more. But overall, it is more of a year of completion. It is a year of, like I said, uprooting the old foundation, really going through the inventory of your inner self, of your mindset, so that you can put a new foundation with the new mindset. Because whatever you've had in the past, it's like you don't want to bring it into the future. You want something new, you want something different. And also the future's energy collectively are so different than the times right now are helping you to adapt, helping you to become more flexible, more mutable, so that you can adapt to whatever the future holds for us. Because whatever the future holds for us is so much bigger than we can comprehend. And we are at this time of in between spaces where we may be sort of like rolling off, because, our foundation is shifting and we don't know where we're rolling off to. And we're not meant to know because we may not even comprehend it. We just have to learn to be flexible, learn to let go, and remember to connect your inner power so that inside, you have that security, that foundation inside of you, so that any kind of external changes and transformations do not threaten you so much, because you have such a deep connection to the divine and to the spirit that you know everything is fine. Everything is fine. Now, where we are right now and where we are going, I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Right now, we just exited the eclipse season. And I mentioned that eclipse season eclipses usually come in pairs. Sometimes there may be even 3 of them, and they happen every about 6 months. So this year, 2020, we had 3 eclipses. Next year, we're going to have 3 times that we had this pairs of eclipses. So there were actually 6. This year, 2021, we're only going to have 2 times. So it's going to be in May, June, and then November, December. So the eclipses that happened right now, what's so significant about them? The November 30th was the full moon lunar eclipse. Any full moon is about endings, is about culmination or completion or a time of release. And it was in the sign of Gemini. So there was something about it was pointing you towards releasing some maybe communication, ways of communication that no longer serve you. Or maybe where you're not attentive enough, you're not listening enough, especially early December, because any kind of eclipses, when they come in pairs and there's 2 weeks in between, so much is happening. It's hard for us to comprehend. It's hard for us to understand the deeper meanings. Even by now, which is only a week later, it's still hard. We will be seeing and understanding the reasons why things happen, the deeper reasons, right? The sort of spiritual reasons only later on. So it's usually a very heightened emotionally time. It's hard to understand things and why everything is happening, and also a time of shifts. Some things may be taking place, and sometimes they're actually minor. Sometimes it's a new inspiration that comes in and you feel it's minor, but it's actually like a seed for something really grand that is to be emphasized in the future years. So on November 30th, like I said, there was a time of release and culmination, and maybe related to communication, or how you listen, how you find connection to other people. Or maybe it was even in the era of social media, and you just felt that there was something that's not working for you and you have to readjust to how you deal with that, because social media, internet in general, quite a Gemini, have quite Gemini energies. Then on December 14th, we had a solar eclipse, which is a new moon. And new moons are about new beginnings, new inspirations, new ideas, new projects. And that's when not necessarily we start the new projects, but that's when we get the idea, the inception of something new. So what happened then? What happened on December 14th and a little bit after? Maybe you've had some new inspirations, new ideas, new people coming into your life. Those would be very, very significant. And it may have been, again, something with the communication and how you deal with other people. Maybe change to your perspective or your outlook to life, like a grand, your beliefs may have, may have start to shift. So then we are, so why else this time is so significant, and why I said that not only it's a winter solstice that happens every year, not only it's the 2020, which is such a grand year that I try to kind of explain a little bit why it's so grand based on the alignments. We also have something that we call a conjunction, and we have two great planets. They're the biggest planets in our solar system, and we call them social planets, Saturn and Jupiter. And these two have changed signs from one sign, which was the Capricorn, which I mentioned. We had this Capricorn conjunction that was amplifying the Capricorn themes. They changed the signs from Capricorn to Aquarius, one after another. Saturn went into Aquarius on the 17th of December. So think about it. We went through all these eclipses. Right after that, Saturn is moving into Aquarius. Right after that, Jupiter is moving into Aquarius, which was yesterday on the 19th. The two grand, social planets moving into Aquarius is a big deal. Saturn spends about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years in each sign. Jupiter spends about a year in each sign. And then both moving quite at the same time, quite right after the eclipses, and meaning from the perspective from Earth, we see them sort of having this conjunction, meeting in one place on December 21st, the winter solstice. It is a big deal. Just all of that, one layer on top of layer on top of layer of significance, just shows us that we can't even comprehend how grand these times are. So the grand conjunction that is happening on December 21st, when these two planets are happening on winter solstice, will be beginning a new cycle. Whenever planets meet, and anything in astrology, when we look at astrology, we really study cycles. So, one cycle is Saturn, was in Capricorn, now it's moving into Aquarius. Another cycle is Jupiter is moving into Aquarius. But another cycle is that the Saturn and Jupiter actually meet together on the sky, which doesn't happen that often, only happens every 20 years. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. Then we also, at this moment, we also have Neptune, which is the planet of spirituality, planet of the higher realms, but also planet of the illusion or even addiction, because it's basically, it's the other world, like where we're bringing ourselves into. That could be in higher realms, but that could be instigating some mental health crisis. That could also be instigating some, substance abuse, right? It's just the different worlds that we are choosing to connect. And Neptune, this planet, is squaring the nodes. The lunar nodes are kind of our karmic points. So we may be going through some karmic events, karmic turns. We're not maybe going, we are going. I'm quite positive about that. There will be shifts happening right now and into the winter, where you will feel that maybe your mind is kind of hesitant to accept those, but just kind of flow, just let yourself flow with, with this whole life situation, because there's no other way. Like, we can't really grab to the old pattern, because the whole world is changing. And really, if we are not adapting to the new world energies, then we are exiting completely, right? So if we're holding tensely to the old patterns, we will be exiting this reality. I don't think anybody in this group is. I think we're all here quite adaptable to this new world and open to the spiritual lessons that are coming in, but in general, for the collective. And then 2021, where we're moving into is this tension between this Saturn, the planet of government, of businesses, of structure, of status quo, of tradition, and Uranus, which is the planet of drastic shifts, the planet of the future, the planet that, you know, is innovative and very unique in its own way. So the tension shows that there will be some sort of kind of push and pull between this, you know, two energies, and collectively we will be experiencing it as sort of tension between, let's say, government and the people. Now, before we go into the more of the 2021 description, this is the second out of the two journaling prompts that I'd like to offer to you. And this one is for you to reflect on the couple of dates. One is, maybe you can remember where you were on December 21st, 2017. Maybe you can recall, and maybe not, that something important happened then, or some new realization came in that you initiated this new 3 years. Maybe you can identify a theme or a challenge, a main predominant challenge of this last 3 years. Think if you can do that, because remember how I told you we study astrology by cycles. So I will be explaining there's some sort of cycle that was of this last 3 years, and maybe you can identify it for yourself. Another question is about this eclipses that just happened. Maybe you can recall some major events took place since November 30th. Well, it doesn't have to be a major, like, you know, a given birth to a new being, but maybe it was a very tense conversation that took you out of your center, or something else that at that time just felt like your mind was all in it. And maybe you can identify some changes that started to take place after December 14th. What new inspirations, new ideas, or maybe just new circumstances that started to kind of like pull you into the new life? Maybe you can pinpoint those things. So again, I'm going to give you a few minutes, and if you have any questions right now about this, you can ask. What is so significant that happened on December 21st, 2017, and the themes that it initiated at that time? Well, the planet Saturn went into Capricorn on that date, and then it was there for 3 years. Saturn is about quite tough, you know, tough lessons, and Capricorn, it's home sign, basically meaning that Saturn can really exercise its nature and its power in Capricorn the best. So Saturn in Capricorn is quite karmic, and it offers many lessons that require us to be diligent, to show up. It certainly doesn't let us skip a step. It's asking us to learn and relearn and pass like 2, 3, 5 exams after the lesson is learned. It's really making sure that we got the lesson of some sort of that's always related to this physical reality. And at the same time, once we do that, and usually our nature is really resisting this Saturn and Capricorn, Saturn energies in general, because we just want to be free and we just want to float and have fun and enjoy. But Saturn is like a grandfather that's like, I don't think you're being realistic, you know, you're being too out there. So it brings us to Earth, and it teaches us some very important lessons about life, time, and space. And if we do learn those lessons and we are open to work with Saturn, it really gives us some great rewards, something that we would feel so good about because we actually put hard work and now we feel so good after that. When I talk about Saturn as some sort of being, what I really mean is there's archetypical energies. So as an archetype, and we are full of all those energies, right? So we have all of those archetypes in us. But as if we just separate and take this energies as its own, and then we can kind of draw its qualities. That's what I mean when I address Saturn like that. Again, I don't really mean like some sort of god or being that just sits over there and, you know, talks to us like that. But sometimes it helps to visualize it like this. So if you were able to identify a theme of last 3 years, the good news is that that theme is ending. Those hard lessons, we're kind of coming into an end because Saturn already entered Aquarius. Aquarius has a very different energy. There is more, it's lighter. It's not so heavy as Capricorn, that's an earth energy. And it's going to be kind of working in the realm of freedom. And I'll talk about it in just a few minutes. But this sort of theme that may have started for you in December 21st or around that time and lasted for this last 3 years, the main theme is about to end or already ended. And you kind of like passed the exam, you passed the test. So yay, congratulations. And then another point in terms of your new moon and full moon and the eclipses, and I already mentioned that something that you may have started to receive, the inspiration, ideas, people, projects, some new things that are coming into your reality since December 14 may actually be quite significant and will carry you forward into some new future, and will they're not necessarily be the ones that will be with you 6 months from then, but they may be kind of like stimulating to take path up in a particular direction that or change your paths. So whatever you kind of experiencing right now, there may be some inspirations or changes happening into your life. They will be manifesting themselves in kind of a bigger shape and form and really taking the space and the physical reality by May, June next year. So there will be some sort of culmination of whatever you are perceiving right now. And whatever you have been ending on the 30th is really important to kind of grasp and digest, because it's just helping us to step into this future with more freedom. There was some sort of way that we still were asked to let go of, so that we can step into the potential, the full potential that we can express in this physical life, this lifetime. So those are journaling prompts, and I hope you gain something for yourself from that. Now let's talk about this great conjunction that happens on December 21st, which is tomorrow, that is also on winter solstice. So, and it's the conjunction of these two social planets, like I said, Saturn and Jupiter, and they're meeting in the sign of Aquarius, which is also quite a sign about, it's all about groups and freedom and more, and I'll talk about it. So it is a 20-year cycle. And last time these two planets met were in 2000. So you can also think of what kind of social changes started to happen in 2000. Then the time before, they met in 1981. So if any one of you was born at that time, you're actually experiencing the same alignment in your chart right now, which is quite significant. So I feel like it will really bring some extra kind of influence into your life. So now I'm going to try to convey an astrological point to you, which is, I think, important to understand globally. This is a 20-year long cycle. However, we're entering into a cycle that's much bigger than this. So, because there are cycles within cycles within cycles. So right now, Saturn and Jupiter are entering the sign of Aquarius. They are already in Aquarius and they meet in Aquarius. Like I said, every 20 years they meet somewhere, but they meet in different zodiac signs. And it so happens that they, of course, they go around the sun and they make many cycles around that time. But when they kind of, from our perspective, meet on the same point is only every 20 years. And it so happens that for 200 plus years, they usually meet, not usually, they meet in one element, meaning we have four elements: earth, water, fire, and air. So for the last 250 years, from 1800s, these two planets, social planets, remember, so they set social trends, were meeting in the signs of earth. And earth is all about, groundness, earth resources. So we could see the tendencies of those 200 years were in the areas of, taking resources from the earth and just kind of being more kind of on earth, and everything being more heavy. And so we were using, the fuel and coal and all of those things that are very much kind of the earth element. And also valuing physical resources, valuing physical resources. Now, what happens is that from this time on, for 200 years, these two planets will start meeting in only air signs. An air sign is a very different from Earth. Air is about intellect, is about innovation, is about communication, new technologies, and things like that. So not only we see this 20-year cycle that's ending, we also see this 200 something year cycle of using earth resources ending, and we enter into the new world. So what we can expect from entering into this new, more of the new technology, new themes of social development, something related to more of that, air quality, communication, equality, green technology. There will certainly be more support in all of these organizations or companies that are trying to, promote green technology. There will be freedom. We will be really focusing on freedom and uniqueness, and at the same time we will need to learn how to respect boundaries, because air is so, is like you can't really set any boundary. But with earth, we were like, okay, this is my wall, and my house is kind of separating me from you. Now on this media world, with internet, we almost have no boundaries, and that's the air, right? So we will need to learn to set those boundaries from inside, how we learn to respect each other's boundaries, so that it's not that, if I don't, if I'm online and I can just leave a very strange comment for somebody because nobody sees me and nobody can really get me. That's not going to be okay, but this is what we've been exercising so far, and this is what we will be learning more of. How do we actually set those boundaries? How do we process information? How do we receive information, transfer it, etc.? Now, additional to that, I want to bring the significance of this time, because like I said, it's layer upon layer upon layer. So I actually experienced some sort of quantum leap, meaning there's some sort of a leap in evolution that humanity is experiencing right now. And of course, it's not an overnight situation, right? So that's why 2020 is, started to really shift the foundation. And not to say that that was the first year. Surely many of us started to wake up into this reality already, but now it's on a much grander scale. And then we are really carrying on into the new that we can't even comprehend, because it's so much, we need to open our consciousness to that. And if we're not open until, we can't really understand. So this is a quantum leap, and we're sort of like in this between spaces, and your focus, where you put your attention, your inner world, your mental world, are very important into what timeline are you actually choosing right now? What reality are you setting yourself up? What kind of seeds are you planting right now? So it's very important that you being conscious and aware of your current state, and that you focus on the highest possible, opportunities for you and your world. Now, one more little thing I want to mention is that, remember how I spoke about 1981 and that Saturn and Jupiter met then? So what's an interesting thing is that they met then in an air sign. Before then, they were all in Earth. 1981, they met in Libra, which is an air sign. Then they went back into Taurus, which is an earth sign. And now we're kind of like really entered the 200 plus year cycle of this air sign, social kind of focus on the air. So 1981, and if you remember what was happening at that time, it can show you the glimpses. We then received glimpses of this sort of reality that we're going to be entering right now. And I know that IBM created a personal computer. So all of this, you see this information, this technology, this ability to reach the world, to travel so easily, because air travels, right? Air travels with no boundaries. It gets into any little thing. It is going to be a trend, and you're going to see it's growing much more right now. And I'll talk about the positives and opportunities, and also the risks that it presents. So what is that Aquarian energy? So like I said, we have this great planets meeting in Aquarius. Saturn is going to be in this sign for 2.5 years. Jupiter is going to be here for a year until 2022. So what is it, and what kind of blessings and lessons it's offering us? So Aquarius is certainly about the freedom, individuality. It's about you expressing your unique self, but it's also about reforms and the collective, and thinking for the group, and bringing the future into the now. So you can expect some sort of uprising and dissatisfaction with this sort of old situations and an old status quo sort of mentality. It is about new technology, innovations. Spiritually speaking, it is about the higher mind, right? We have a lower mind, and we have a high mind, the one that's connected to the spirit directly, from which we can pull all of these potentials and bring them into the reality. So Aquarian energy and is very much about that. So we can be receiving a lot of inspirations this time from the ethereal world and manifesting them into the now. So we kind of bringing the future into the now by pulling that information, believing in ourselves, believing in our unique self, and that we remember 2020 is teaching us to gain that inner power, because that's a necessary tool in order for us to move forward with all of these new innovative ideas that we may have. So that when we're going to be receiving resistance, and surely that there will be resistance from status quo, we are actually able to hold on, strongly to our inner power and our inner truth. So what other things though, like I said, anything has a shadow side to it. What I mean is that there is a high octave of energy expression and there is a lower octave of energy expression. There's sort of a shadow side to this Aquarian energy. And what I mean is that Aquarius is an air sign. Air is about intellect. Intellect is void of emotions. So Aquarius energy can present tendencies, and those people who have, let's say, they sun in Aquarius, or were born during that time, they could be quite, interesting, but they may not always be able to connect to to people's emotions. And of course, it depends on where other planets are in your chart. But generally speaking, you can experience this sort of objectivist view where it's very intellect heavy, and people kind of view the group, instead of just looking at each individual person and what each person individually requires and where they've been, what their history, etc. Aquarius is an opposite sign of Leo, and in astrology, when they're opposites, they're also almost kind of like opposites in energy. So Leo is about inner, like, is about self-expression and heart and inner child, and Aquarius, being the opposite of it, is about the group. So there could be tendencies where the group is oppressing the individual. The group is saying, oh, you're being too selfish because you're doing this and that, like you have to come with us. For the betterment of the group, we have to do this. So you be very careful, because it actually can become transfer into the energy where the oppressed become the oppressor. So Aquarian can be that, because like I said, if it is void of emotions, and it is a very kind of like intellectual sign. And we know, those of us who are in yoga and in spirituality, we know that there's so much more than just an intellect, and we can't really understand everything and can connect the dots just by using our intellect. So we losing a lot of context when we just base everything on intellect. That's why we can see this sort of an archetype of a crazy scientist, meaning that when there are experiments done on humanity, sort of thing, where you kind of just in order to make the progress, not you, but like the energy is of that without regard to individuals in particular areas. They more like considering the betterment of the group instead of the betterment of each individual, and understanding that they are all unique and not one solution is not going to work for others. A great example, a very sad and great example of crazy scientists would be, the Nazi Germany, and how much of progress they made in science at that time, but at what cost. So this is, I know it's kind of serious and it's heavy, because it is serious and it's heavy. And we are kind of entering into this quite a polarized world, because like I said, we are shifting the timelines, and with our perceptions and with our mindsets, and most importantly, what our feelings and emotions in each moment, we are setting the future for ourselves. So it is very important that we're still connected to our individuality, to our inner light, to our heart and our self-expression, and to this Aquarian quality that is unique and interesting and so kind of special about, with who it is, without shame, and without letting just the group sort of overpower you and just make everybody the same. Now, what else do we experience right now? From May until the end of 2020, from May to 2020 until the end of 2021, I already said we have this sort of polarization between Gemini and Sagittarius. We call it North Node, South Node placements. And meaning collectively, usually what we say is that wherever the South Node is where we, the collective wants to kind of start moving away from, and experience the South Node, the North Node, because they are 180 degrees. So it's quite on the other side, experience the qualities of the opposite sign, and learn the lessons of the opposite sign, so then we can return back to the original point, but with new information. So Gemini and Sagittarius, basically, I could put it like this: we need more of listening, asking questions, relating to others, kind of being open-minded, understanding that you don't know everything. And until this transit is over, which, like I said, until 2021, there will be new information presented to you each time, which will be shifting your consciousness. And if you're holding on to one belief, it's going to be preventing you from kind of adapting to the new reality. It is an important time to learn and to study, meaning like not necessarily this official sort of diploma search, but more of expanding your consciousness, like I said, learning about other points of view, learning how to debate, how to communicate to people with whom you have different points of view, with whom you have different belief systems, and still being able to learn to come into peace, that they don't have to be your enemy on a collective level. We really have to learn that right now. We really have to learn that for the, for this sort of the future that we want to move into, because we can't just drop half of ourselves. We can't just drop our shadows and just say, you wrong, and I'm not taking you. You can just die over here. I don't care. I'm going to go into where I want to go. No, we want to be able to connect, because whatever the shadow is, or let's say this sort of a part of our subconscious that we don't accept, that is showing to us through some sort of individuals or relationships or events that we don't like, that those things are even more importantly needed to be integrated in our existence, and we need to be curious about them. Where are they coming from? Why do you think this way? Like, whoa, that feels quite cruel. Like, let me see what made this person feel this way and make this sort of belief. So that we have to learn to be open-minded and to not just put a cross on people and be like, yeah, I'm not dealing with that. So connecting, also conscious relationship with media, this is such a big deal. Like I said earlier, how do we draw boundaries? How do we communicate in the media world? We don't know it yet so much, because we are just kind of tapping our feet into it. And we also know how, everything is kind of seen. There's no boundaries. The government can watch you and what you do because of all this, social media and your, Google Maps, whatever you have on your phone. And at the same time, you can watch the government as well. So there's no boundaries right now. And it's important that we kind of be very cautious about that, and we know how to respect the boundaries of other people, because like I said, we no longer have those physical boundaries, like this is my wall, my house, and you can't enter. Now we can enter anywhere, but we have to learn how to respect each other's privacy, and even if we don't agree with the people. So then what we need less of is this authoritarian religion, and that could also mean this sort of a religion of science, because it's sort of, even atheism with the sort of qualities, if we understand what authoritarian religion is, even atheism and science could become this sort of carries the same qualities of religion. Self-righteousness, we definitely need less of that. The 2021 2022 the 2022 will change, but 2021 is really when we need to kind of let go and be more open-minded, not to hold to our own ideologies, not to just kind of be that sort of savior that goes and tells everybody how they're supposed to live their life based on their perspective, because that works for you. That is not what we need to do. You have to learn how to be unique, and you need to learn and to connect to your inner light and not be ashamed of your unique self-expression, definitely. But it doesn't mean that you have to go and teach others right now, because Sagittarius is about the teaching. Unless the teaching opportunities will come to you and people come to you and ask you advice, ask you questions, you share it without any expectations of the outside to shift, to change, to adapt to what you said, then it's okay. But if you are sort of kind of, many of us who, when we just enter the spiritual path, we become quite self-righteous about our ways. If our diet is like this, so we think this is the right one and those people are so wrong, our beliefs, our daily life, etc., 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 right? Oh my God, we kind of we were there just a couple of years ago, and now it's hard for us to believe that some people are still doing it. So that's quite funny though. So definitely less of that, less of that. Also, what's interesting, what's being affected is our education and traveling. And of course, we see that already. Actually, like in May, this sort of transit happened when the node shifted into Gemini Sagittarius. Sagittarius is about long distance traveling and about higher education, all this sort of, you know, the higher education in the way that we remember it, where you kind of go and get your diploma, you go to university, you walk there, you take a train, and then you go and sit at a lecture. Those things are shifting, and there will definitely be some sort of changes to how we travel, how we learn. So I'm not saying here that if you want to pursue your higher education, you should not do it, but there may be a different channels for that. There may be not this sort of these channels that you're used to, where you get a student loan and go to school for 5 years. Things with air, that they get much faster. And also remember how I said that Earth was valuing physicality. So like that physical diploma that you could show people, that was valued. Now it's not so much. Now it's more about your unique self, what qualities you can bring into this environment that you're entering. That will be of the most value. How well are you able to communicate to people, to listen, to share? How well are you with technology? That's going to be a very major thing that we all need to really get acquainted with, because technology will be shifting really quickly, and we have to really catch up with that, while still not letting the technology to just overtake us all, right? And knowing when we need to stop and when we need to just connect with nature and with our body. Now, what else is happening for 2021? The major theme that we're entering right now, especially January, and it's going to become exact on February, and then all throughout the years, it sometimes will be intensifying, sometimes it will be loosening up, intensifying 3 times through the year, is this sort of conversation of tension between the 2 planets, the Uranus and Saturn. Uranus, let me start with Saturn. Saturn is about this government and structures and status quo. Uranus is about it's that actually Aquarius qualities, because Uranus rules Aquarius. So Uranus qualities are this visionary, this future being, this very unique self. So when there is a tension between these 2 planets, then you basically enter into this reality where there's, again, like push and pull. So progress, right, Uranus, versus status quo. Surely progress, but the status quo, is going to be holding on very tightly to that. And remember how Sagittarius and Gemini are teaching us that it's not just black and white. It's actually, how can we understand the status quo no longer works, and not everybody, but it's more and more that will be understood. But what are the great qualities that we can take out of it? What are the great qualities that will be helping the progress? So we can't just say, oh, this is all wrong, everything that you have over here, everything that we have over here right now, we have to be grateful for, because you know, it was brought to us because of all this, you know, earth energy. You know, we live in times that no other people in humanity in the past experienced. Our quality of life, as much as some of us may feel like it's quite bad for some places in the world, it's still so much more better than even 100 years ago. So we have to remember that and be acknowledging and honoring and really grateful for those things. But still, we can't just continue with the same, you know, things that we've had before. How can we bring in, what do we take from the past and bring into the future? So there is a conflict between people, Uranus, and government, big corporations. That's the Saturn rules. So there will be more conversation because, again, we have this Gemini North Node. So how can we, you know, find this? First of all, understanding that the conversation is important, that the government here and these big corporations are here for the people. They're not, you know, they're given the power by the people. So that also means that we all have to understand where we are and what our inner power and our inner value is, so that we are not just kind of thinking that I'm so powerless and let some other guy out there fix it for me. No, we have to claim our power, and we have to start making those changes and start kind of floating through the cracks, because there will be, this is a time of change. There will be some resistance and tension. And maybe it is not so much about the breaking the status quo. Maybe it is finding the way through the cracks and creating new reality. Maybe it's not necessarily for us to be fighting with this old reality, but starting the new reality with the tribe, with the people that are like-minded. And then be open, of course, to, you know, to answer any questions of those that are curious about your life, but not so much adjusting or fighting against. You know, it's more like creating. We really need to learn how to focus more. There's so much of attention that we spend on fighting against. We've had a lot of wars in the past, even though right now we live at the times that we have very minimal wars compared to, again, before. The wars were constant everywhere. Sometimes there was a war. But right now it's a different type of war that maybe all through media, it's not as exactly kind of seen, perceived as easily. So we have to learn how to work with the technology. We have to learn where right now the greatest resource is our attention, and how our attention is being pulled into different places, and how we can actually put that attention towards our unique qualities and start birthing those projects, those creative endeavors that are coming from that deeper inner light that we are all now in the process of connecting and finding. So there's certainly, this year is kind of like will be such a year of shifts. Interestingly, 2020 was a year of shifts, but then we had more of a slow transits. They were slow, kind of ongoingly growing. Now we have, when Uranus comes into the picture, the shifts are drastic. Uranus is a sudden shift. So there may be some sort of events happening that will be really, shifting again the whole foundation for us. And what's interesting is that the more you learned and drew the lesson from 2020, the easier it will be for you to just kind of flow with what will be happening. Because you already understood, okay, the old ways are not working. I don't know exactly what the new ways are, but I know they will be coming, they will be shown to me. And I'm just open and kind of I'm letting go, and I'm trusting into the divine flow of things. I'm letting life to show me. So that is a very important state of mind, because the consciousness is going to be expanding, and we need to allow flexibility in order to easier adapt to these new changes. You must connect to your inner value and your individuality, because Uranus is in Taurus. Taurus is about values, about our personal finances, it is about our immediate environment. So it's important that where you are, you feel comfortable, you don't feel ashamed of what you have, you don't let other people, because like I said, there may be some tensions of groups shaming, you know, some individual qualities of you and wanting everybody to kind of be the same, wear the same things. That is a shadow side of Aquarius. We don't want to have that. We want to be able to freely express our individuality with the respect of boundaries of other people. How it's going to come out, it's interesting because we actually don't have the solutions yet, but at least if you hold the focus on that, it will manifest for you easier. And then if you are not so adaptable to this current times, and if you're not fully incorporated the lessons of 2020, you may start seeing a little bit of a harsher shifts in your reality. There may be some financial losses because of Uranus and Taurus. There may be some health crisis or emotional crisis. So again, if those things happening, of course we want to make sure we kind of fix the physical reality, but remember that the actual causes are much deeper than that. So connect to that sense of freedom, to this adaptability to the times, and some things will start being become looser. And when you're not as stubbornly holding on to the old, there will be no need for such a drastic shift or kick and change to your reality, because you are easier just flowing with what is. Now let's get into the two seasons that we are approaching, the winter and spring. And because this is kind of the time in between these eclipse seasons, right? We just exited one eclipse season. We will be entering the new one at the end of May and early June. So what's happening in between? So winter of 2021 is quite an important time. And this is when you really want to become very kind of open into, to the changes, yet very connected and grounded to your inner truth. So it is so important to be centered, because there will be some time shifts. There will be some kind of a powerful psychic periods. You can experience it as that if you are really deeply connected. You can actually, amplify your connection to the divine, start feeling more of some sort of, in some sort of way, in some sort of sensory way, this divine communication to you. It is certainly possible, but there may also be some sort of transitions that will be taking you out of your reality now into some other reality, and just be open to that. It is also an important time for decision making, especially the first half of this winter until like February. We will be adapting to new circumstances. Remember, of the Gemini lessons are about listening and understanding that you know very little, and that there will be more information coming in. So don't make rushed decisions. Be very open. Remember that, with the 2021 and this Gemini energy, more information will be presenting itself later. By the time 2022 comes, some things that may have not been considered now will be rising up later. And if you actually went into some endeavors that were kind of questionable already, you may be perceiving some not unfortunate, but some information that you didn't originally know, and that may have actually affected your decision-making process. So it is a very important time for decision making. Be very careful with where you put your energy and what you believe. Everything, with this air season, everything is out there to get your attention. Your attention is the most valid resources. That's where the money is right now, right? We know with all this social media and all the advertisement. So be very conscious about your attention and where you put your energy to and what you choose to believe. some of the changes may be hard to accept, again, as depending on how hard you are grasping to some things. And but they always bring us to a new level. They are here. It's kind of this sort of divine hand that's taking us to bring to some new place that we are not aware of. Definitely adapting to new circumstances. By mid-February, we will experience some sort of restrictions and new rules. You know, certainly based on the situation in the world, whatever is happening right now, seems like by mid-February, we're going to know a little bit more of, okay, like if you want to travel, this is how you do it. And, you know, some things will be starting to come up that will be affecting our traveling and communication. So again, those new restrictions and rules, I don't necessarily tell you that just do everything you are told to. There may be opportunities to go through the crack if you feel that your unique self and unique expression is broad, you know, is not being honored and respected, but by what there is, then you may learn to kind of create a new reality somewhere else. So this is sort of a beautiful dance. It will be quite interesting how we all will navigate through that, because it's always a balance, because you also don't want to just, you know, disrespect other beings that are around you. But remember, there are ways out of things, and I'm talking about legal ways. I'm not talking about anything illegal, of how you can maintain and honor your truth while still being able to kind of continue living, you know, with the in the society. Or it's very important to create your environment, to know who your environment is, and know where you feel good, know who you can trust. It's very important at this time right now. And what will be happening in early March is that by then, most of those difficult times that the 2020 brought to us um, will start disappearing. By then, we will already know a little bit more of the concrete information, and some people may actually feel like, oh, okay, then, you know, I have all this freedom. So watch out for that too, because like I said, anything related to communication and to traveling and to higher education is undergoing a shift. So we, you know, we feel maybe that we've been stuck for a long time, but I would rather recommend short distance traveling rather than long distance traveling at this time. And whatever the seeds you are planting right now in December, remember December 14th, and I asked you to look at what kind of ideas and new information started to come in. By early March, you may start not feeling or experience actually in your physical reality that those seeds are sprouting. Something has started to take momentum. And then by the time we get into spring, I call it, you know, from the spring equinox, the 21st of March, this is going to be a good time to start taking action. Anytime we enter spring equinox, we're in the season of Aries. This is a very good time for drive, for this action-oriented, you know, choices, anything shifting your reality, changing, using that information that you received during this sort of a very quiet inward time of winter, using that inner guidance to which you were able to connect during this winter time and bring it into this reality. Act on these ideas and decision that you made just earlier. By late spring or late April rather, you by then the energies will consolidate. So whatever you put into action, by then you will be asked to then, you know, start working on it. You know, now you like, it's great at the beginning, and then the Sometimes the challenging part is you start something and now you really have to daily show up and put work into it. So that will be the time. So it will not be a time to start making new plans. It will be a good time to just keep growing on the foundation that you already set in place and just work, work, work. And then you will be actually reaping some great rewards. By May, July, we will start seeing some, actually in the period between May and July, we will start to perceive some new trends that will be showing us glimpses into the 2022. And then it's kind of going to subside and it's going to go away. And with the beginning of 2022, those ideas and inspirations will start coming in later. It will also be collective, but maybe personally for you. So if you will start receiving some information, some inspirations, and then you will see that it's kind of going away, don't feel bad about it. It wasn't the time to birth it yet. But make notes, get that inspiration. By 2022, it's going to be a great time. Or maybe you started to doing something then and it's not really picking up. Don't worry, again, by 2022, that may start picking up. What else is happening at that, later spring, May to June? We have a risk of getting lost in illusion because, again, we enter the eclipse season and Neptune is going to be involved in that. And again, I told you, Neptune is about either spirituality and psychic abilities, but it also could be a planet of illusion, of distraction, of mental crisis, and also some substance abuse. So, or even just that emotional sort of illusions where we feel one way and the emotions are just taking over control over us, or we just feel very emotionally sensitive. At the same time, it is a good time to connect spiritually to this to this grander self, to your higher self, or whatever you call it, to the divine, and find inspiration from there. It could be a great creative time. So it's not so much of a time of making new plans, making new projects or signing new contracts. Definitely not a good time, May to July. But it could be a good time to express yourself creatively, express yourself romantically, and just kind of feel that sort of, this romantic tendencies of Neptune, that spiritual heightened self. Now, by May 26th, that's when we're going to have a lunar eclipse. Again, lunar eclipse, and it's also a full moon. It's always a culmination of some sort of December themes. Whatever you started to planting right now, 6 months from now, by May 26th, you may start to reaping the results of it. And then in Gemini, for Gemini solar eclipse, June 10th, we will start receiving major new inspirations. Again, it's going to be quite hard to distinguish that from just a regular life, but later you will see they're going to stick around. So take a note of any sort of inspirations that you receive. Then I highly recommend to be doing more of journaling during the eclipse season time, because like I said, there is a lot of information that's coming in. We may feel a little bit too emotional or kind of get into some illusions. And when we write things out, it helps us to clear our mind a little bit, or at least to process and to vent the emotions without hurting anything externally. Now, just to conclude, the overall 2021, the first half will be easier, especially after March. And then we're going to get into this place of maybe new rules coming up, and we will be required to adapt. We will be required to adapt to create new life. So again, not necessarily to just do whatever we are told to do, but to create a life that will be in alignment with our truth and the guidance that we receive, And so it's extremely important that this spring, this winter time from now until spring, March, we actually connect to that inner light, because it will help us to, when we feel maybe lost or confused, because like I said, symbolically, it is going to be the dark time, because the nights are so dark, right? It's going to be dark time, and the guiding light is that kind of candle from within. And we'll see conversations between the government and the people, negotiations, things will be kind of maybe sometimes tense, maybe there will be sort of, kind of debates or fights, you want us this, but we want that, etc. Or different groups rising and saying, like, this doesn't work for me, I don't believe in it, because it's all of the Sagittarius kind of theme. And what's important is that in 2021, you connect to your inner genius, you connect to your to the self of you that is maybe different, maybe used to be shy in the past, maybe felt like, ooh, like I'm out of this world, like people don't understand me, people will think I'm crazy. Well, now this is your time. Now this is the time that, and for the next 20 years, this will be valued. This will be of great value. So remember, if we conclude that 2020 is the time of transformation, is a time of letting go of some major social and emotional and especially mind constructs that are too heavy, that are holding you away from your inner power, that maybe you've given away your power in other, places, people, etc. So you connect into that inner power, you claim it back. The 2021 will be is that you're finding that inner genius right now, especially during the winter time. And with this inner power, you're not letting any kind of external influence now sway you away from your inner truth. You honoring, you trusting, and you valuing that inner self, because unless you actually start valuing that inner voice that you perceive, you hear, you can't expect other people starting valuing it. So you have to be really strong and believing in yourself and not be shy. And like I said, for many of us, we may have felt like we were out of this world. Well, now our world is here. So, and let's talk about your winter solstice assignment. And I know I'm a little bit past the time, but it's just a few, just a few more things. So your winter solstice assignment, this night from the 20th to 21st, and of course you're welcome to take it or not, is the candlelight meditation. Remember, the candle represents this kind of light, especially if it's a beeswax. It's the highest frequency to the frequency of the sun, they say, but it could be any other candle. So meditate on the candle with at night while everything else is dark and you only have this candle, symbolic of this current times. You don't see anything else, you only see that light, right? And when you kind of have that light and you go around, you can see just a little bit outside of yourself. So this is very symbolic. Connect to your inner light, set an intention to connect to your inner light, to this inner truth, and let the light remind you of that. By meditating on that, let the light remind you, let it be awakened. And that may not happen only during this one meditation. I encourage you to continue doing it all through this winter season. It will be helping you to kind of navigate through whatever will be happening externally, and it will be growing in strength. The inner voice is always within. What we need to do is to acknowledge it, to honor it, and to listen to it, because if we don't, it's just going to continue being really, really quiet. The more attention we put in it, the more we start communicating with our inner truth and acting from it, the louder it will be getting. And here you go, your spiritual kind of source of information, it's right there. So another thing you can do is set up an altar in honor of your inner light. You may already have an altar, so you may kind of like redo something, bring some new object, something that will kind of initiate this feeling of connecting to your light, you know, maybe something white, you know, very kind of tender and spiritual, some crystals, anything that helps you to connect to that freedom self. Um, and set it up with this intention of kind of guiding you through this time and honoring that inner light. If you can dream it, you can create it. So one of the questions you can ask yourself, because this is an Aquarius time, is what I can offer to the world. And just meditate with that and let the answers come in. The answers don't always come in just during the meditation. You maybe send messages through different sources, whatever is easiest for the spirit realm to communicate to you through. It could be even a recommended YouTube video. It could be, you know, your friend mentioning something to you out of the blue, and you're like, wait. It could be just some sort of synchronistic moment that has a symbolic meaning just for you. Anything really. Just keep listening. Could be dreams, of course. Pay attention to your dreams, your daydreaming, even some visions that you may be receiving that you would think you created, your mind created. They actually may very likely be some sort of communication that you get in those inspiration moments. And of course, your dreams when you are asleep, those are very important to pay attention to. All answers are within. Remember that. It's fun to use astrology, divination, you know, psychic readings, all other things. It's fun, it's great, it's helpful, but all answers are within. And technically, you don't really need anything. You choose to use other sources, but you don't have to. Thank you very much.